Wait, is Dad coming too? Emily, my only daughter, pouted as she swished her colorful dress around. Flipping through what seemed to be a photo album from her junior college graduation, Emily sighed deeply and muttered, I thought it'd just be Mom and me. Emily, don't say that. Your dad even took time off work for this, my wife, Laura, said gently. Well, if that's the case, I wish he'd come to my elementary school sports day or graduation instead. As Emily spoke, she glanced up at the certificate displayed in the living room with my name, James Walker, written on it. It was from when I was honored at work during Emily's elementary school years. Up until Emily graduated high school, I worked as a director at a local TV station. Just as she said, I hadn't attended her sports days, graduation ceremonies, or even her entrance ceremonies. When Emily was assigned to be the anchor in the relay race and begged me to come, it was Laura who comforted her in my place. By the time I finally apologized to Emily, 10 days had passed since the event. Maybe Emily didn't even see me as her father. After all, I was hardly ever home. I don't recall taking her to a theme park, on a trip, or even to a park. That's why he feels bad about all of that now. It's fine. I interrupted, cutting off Laura, who had been trying to convince Emily. I fiddled with my phone. But you've already made the reservation, haven't you? Laura asked, her brows furrowed in concern. At that moment, her phone chimed with a cheerful ringtone. I just sent you the details of the reservation. Why don't you and Emily go together? Laura opened her mouth as if to say something. But after a pause, she swallowed her words. All right, she replied quietly. Emily, now changed into casual clothes, left the house with Laura. Left alone in the living room, I sank into the sofa. I don't even feel nostalgic. I muttered, picking up one of the photo albums Laura had carefully compiled since Emily was born. When Emily was born, I was climbing the ranks from assistant director to director. It was the period when I was least present at home. Every photo in the album was of Emily and Laura together. I wasn't in any of them. Maybe that's why, in my mind, Emily always seemed like a child. No, she was a child. Next month, Emily will start her life as a working adult. Before that, I just want to be able to talk to her normally. Once she takes her first steps into adulthood, her schedule will only get busier. No, the day she leaves this house for good isn't far off. Before that happens, even just for a day, or just a few hours, I can't help but wish to create some family memories. I know it's selfish of me, but I can't help wanting it. From her graduation ceremony to her company induction day, Emily had been constantly busy. Despite it being her last spring break, she hadn't gone on any trips, spent time with friends, or savored the final moments of her student life. Emily would soon start working at a regional bank. During her junior college years, she had diligently attended seminars and studied finance to prepare for the job, using her final spring break to deepen her knowledge. Are you feeling lonely? Laura teased, approaching me with a cup of coffee and a smile. Emily's always been around the house. It feels quiet. Just so you know, Emily's been holding back that loneliness her whole life, Laura said, setting a cup in front of me and raising her eyebrows. I know. I regret it, I said, pulling out a pair of theme park vouchers I had stashed in my notebook. Rolling them into a ball, I tossed them toward the trash can. They hit the rim and rolled onto the floor, as if reflecting my reluctance to let go. Are you sure about this? Laura asked, picking up the crumpled vouchers with a concerned look. Even though Laura must have struggled between Emily and me, she never lashed out unnecessarily and always stood by me. Feeling grateful for her support, I smiled warmly. It's fine. But didn't you also book a dessert buffet in that other buffet restaurant Emily wanted to try on the same day? I canceled all of it. Laura gazed sadly at the vouchers she still held. I'm sorry for making you look like that, I said softly. She forced a smile. Emily is trying so hard. I can't let my selfish desires get in her way. Hearing that, Laura finally dropped the vouchers into the trash can. This time, they landed neatly inside. Still, as her parent, I'd like to do something to celebrate her graduation. True. The dress was more of a gift for her starting her job. She was likely making her own coffee. The sound of water boiling echoed from the kitchen. Knowing Emily, she'll probably want something practical. She's a realist, just like you. Laura teased with a smile as she returned to the dining table. As Laura pulled out a chair and was about to sit down, her eyes widened. Oh, that's right. I don't think Emily has anything besides her interview suit. Her words made me glance at the calendar on the wall. With less than a week before her first day at work, it hit me that Emily still didn't have a proper suit. I groaned, holding my head in frustration. It's not like I forgot. Emily insisted she wouldn't buy one yet because she gained a little weight from the stress of her thesis. Laura said, sipping her coffee and raising her eyebrows at me as if to say, I'd never forget something so important. I sighed lightly. Weight she would lose over a few weeks will go back soon enough. That's exactly why she wants to buy a suit while she's slim. She figures it'll motivate her to maintain her figure, or else the suit won't fit. I'll never understand how women think. I shrugged but couldn't help feeling grateful that Emily had held off on buying a suit until now. Now, I had the chance to get her the suit she would wear to her company induction and first day of work. A milestone she achieved through her own hard work. From here on, she would wear that suit as she embarked on her journey as a working adult. As I thought about Emily's future, my eyes began to sting with emotion. You've become quite sentimental, James. Laura remarked, picking up my empty coffee cup. It's thanks to you, Laura, I said, watching her head toward the kitchen. You're welcome, she replied with a mischievous smile. The TV station was always bustling. Even during the supposedly quiet hours between midnight and early morning. People rushed about editing footage and revising scripts for the morning shows. Up until 2 years ago, I had been one of them. 2 years ago, when Emily graduated from high school, I decided to step away from the chaos of the production floor. Now, I worked as an office administrator for the station. James, you're late. The administrative office, the only quiet place in the TV station, is where the office staff handle their tasks. When I arrived 30 minutes before my 9 a.m. shift, expecting the usual calm, I was surprised to find the office buzzing with noise. Michael, who had taken over my program and been promoted to director 2 years ago when I left the production floor, was enthusiastically waving at me from my desk. With this energy in the morning, how long have you been awake? As expected, James. You guessed it. I'm on day 2 of no sleep. I've taken a few naps, though. Michael said, flashing me a peace sign, the dark circles under his eyes making it all the more dramatic. I gave him a wry smile. If you keep working like that, your body won't hold up. If the director doesn't rest, neither the ADs or the rest of the staff will rest. Getting enough sleep is part of the job, too. Whether he was listening or not, Michael spread a script across my desk. James, I'd like your advice on something, he said. The script he showed me was for a show that had started last fall. A current affairs program where teenagers discussed political and social issues with refreshing honesty. Michael had been nurturing this project since his AD days, and I remembered how much effort and enthusiasm he poured into it. The ratings haven't been good. It held up without the spring program changes, right? I replied. Looking at the data sheets Michael placed alongside the script, I saw alarmingly low ratings that made it surprising the show had even lasted through this spring. The first 2 months weren't bad. I thought the discussions had become too complex, so starting in January, I introduced 2 topics per episode. But that meant they couldn't discuss each topic in depth. You're absolutely right. I'm starting to think the show itself needs an overhaul. But this was the program you always dreamed of creating, wasn't it? That's why you worked so hard for it. Hearing that, the tension in Michael's shoulders eased. "I really can't beat you, James," he said, scratching the back of his head before sinking into the seat beside me. "Introducing a new concept is one option, but if it fails, you'll lose even more viewers. For now, start by identifying which topics have worked well in the past. Once you have the results, come back to me," I said, handing back the script and data sheets. Just then, the 10-minute warning chime for the start of the workday rang. In a TV station where even the reception area sometimes doubled as a set, this chime was unique to the administrative office. As expected, the demon director's words carry weight. "Stop calling me that," I said, giving him a wry smile. His grin only widened. Michael was right. Up until 2 years ago, I was known as the demon director. At first, I didn't understand why I was called that and often felt self-conscious about it. But Michael had once laughed and explained it wasn't because I was harsh on others but because I was relentless with myself. "You'd handle tasks an AD like me should have done, like briefing the cast or checking catering preparations. You were always at the station. And you'd even stand up for me when we faced intimidating guests. On top of that, you made sure no one took your thoroughness the wrong way. Honestly, taking over your show felt like an impossible task. No one can match your attention to detail, James," he said. Looking back, I think I pushed myself too hard. I admitted, sighing as I turned on my computer. "But because of all that effort, you caught the attention of Laura, the station's top announcer," Michael teased, standing up. "And now my daughter can barely stand me. Well, she's all grown up now. She starts work this spring. So, 2 years ago, she was in college? Or still in high school?" Michael asked, holding the script to his chest as he pondered aloud. Then, as if struck by a revelation, he jumped. "Wait, was your request to transfer to administration because of your daughter?" I had never clarified why I switched to an administrative role 2 years ago. It wasn't a secret, but it wasn't something I felt the need to announce either. The legendary demon director stepped away from the production floor. There was a time when I was the subject of curious stares throughout the station. I let the rumors people spread as they pleased go unchecked. By that point, I had already decided to live for my family. I didn't have the luxury of being distracted by trivial matters. Just as Michael started with, "I wouldn't know," being single and all, the official start of day chime rang. It's honestly a waste. Even the demon director, admired by everyone at the station, is no match for his daughter, Michael said as he headed for the office door. "To be fair, you can't turn back time," I murmured to his retreating figure. I picked up my phone from the desk, lighting up the screen. The image of Emily in her dress brought a natural warmth to my heart. The skies were a perfect blue for Emily's fresh start. Wearing the gray suit Laura and I had picked out, she smiled shyly at her mother. "Mom," as expected of a former announcer. "You have great taste," she said, spinning once in front of the mirror. "Oh, Emily," Laura said. "What? Did I say something weird?" "You're grinning," Emily said, giving Laura a puzzled look through the mirror as Laura placed a hand on her shoulder. "It was Dad who picked out and bought this suit," Laura said. She added, "I just gave some advice," but it didn't seem to register with Emily, who was wide-eyed with surprise. From Emily, now looking down, came a soft voice, "After all this time, what's the point?" For 18 years, I had been the father who made Emily feel lonely. I never expected to make up for years of loneliness with just 2 years of trying to mend things. Still, I had resolved to slowly bridge the gap between Emily and me. Her voice, strained as though dragged from her throat, almost broke that resolve. I had always known this was just my selfishness. And yet, knowing I was imposing my feelings and circumstances on her, all I could manage to say was, "I'm sorry." It was then that Laura opened her mouth to speak. "But, thank you," Emily murmured. "Emily, you need to say it louder, or he won't hear it." "Oh, be quiet." "Oh no, I might be late," Emily replied, hurriedly masking her emotions. With a radiant smile, she cheerfully said, "I'm off," as she stepped into her new life. "Well, that went well," Laura said, sitting down next to me on the sofa. "It's just one step," I said. "But look at you, beaming like that. Just be happy for yourself," she replied, resting her head on my shoulder. It had been a long time since we'd had such a peaceful and joyful morning. "Well, I should get going too. Then I think I'll make a feast to celebrate," Laura said, watching as I grabbed my bag and put on my shoes. "Come back early," she added, her face glowing with joy. Just as I reached for the front door, ready to leave, it happened. The door I was about to push was suddenly pulled back toward me. "Emily?" As she lifted her head, a drop of water splashed onto my cheek. Emily, her face flushed and tears streaming, turned and ran up the stairs. A loud slam echoed all the way to the entrance as her door shut with force. "Emily." I tried to take off the shoes I just put on. "James," Laura's voice stopped me in my tracks, calm but firm. "Go to work," she said. "But Emily is." "Right now, the best thing you can do for Emily isn't staying by her side," Laura interrupted, her eyes unusually serious. She was right. I had never been there for her school troubles or her friendships. My sudden presence now wouldn't prompt her to share the reason behind her tears. If anything, I might make things worse. It wasn't regret I felt, but it was just the weight of consequences I brought upon myself. Without another word, I left the house. Laura's usual take care sounded heavier as the door closed behind me. So much for the feast I had planned. Looking at the celebratory meal she'd prepared for Emily's first day of work, now sitting untouched on the dining table. All the dishes on the table were covered in plastic wrap, untouched. It seemed Laura had considered making something else, but decided to stick to the original celebratory meal, thinking that good food might help Emily feel a bit better. "Where's Emily?" She cried herself to sleep. Laura replied softly. Then, lowering her voice, she said, "And look at this." She reached under the chair and pulled something out. A uniform? What Laura laid out on the table was a uniform. The familiar design was from the regional bank where Emily was supposed to attend her company induction ceremony today. "What is this?" I muttered, unfolding the uniform. The words printed across it made me grimace. On the uniform Emily was supposed to wear, large characters read, "Low Education." When I went to her room, she was crying and clutching this uniform. She kept saying, "Only mine was like this," over and over. Emily had indeed graduated from a junior college rather than a 4-year university. She had chosen that path, saying she wanted to leave home as soon as possible. But I'm surprised Emily, as strong-willed as she is, would be so shaken by words like this. "Do you know why Emily wanted to leave home so quickly?" Laura asked as she gently folded the uniform I had spread out. Her expression was calm but tinged with sorrow, as if recalling the moment Emily made that decision. "Because she didn't want to see me anymore?" Laura slowly shook her head. "Emily said she wanted to become like you, someone relied upon by many people, someone who could support others. She believed she needed to be independent to achieve that. She thought that if she stayed home, she'd never stop relying on us." Her voice quivered as she continued. "For her, today was supposed to be a monumental step forward. And yet, someone crushed her spirit with these thoughtless words," Laura said, gritting her teeth and showing rare frustration. My hands trembled as I clenched them into fists. "Emily," I whispered, and without another thought, I ran upstairs. "James?" "Emily." Standing in front of Emily's door, I called out to her. There was no sound from inside the room. She might not have been listening. Even so, I wanted her to hear me. "Leave it to me." Grabbing the uniform from the dining table, I left the house. Behind me, I heard Laura's slightly exasperated "Take care." For the first time in years, I felt the morning sunlight seep into my skin. Back when I was a director, it had been a daily experience. Now, after 2 years, there was no room to marvel at its nostalgic warmth. Pressing against my aching joints and throbbing head, I opened the front door. There stood Emily, her head hanging low. She was wearing the gray suit Laura and I had given her yesterday, her shoulders slumped. "Good morning," I said, gently breaking the silence. A quick glance at my watch showed it was already 8:45 a.m. The bank's starting time had long passed. "I can't believe I'm thinking of quitting because of this." Emily's strained voice broke the silence. "I hate this weak version of myself," she added, her shoulders trembling as she collapsed to her knees. "When I tried to leave the house, my body just started shaking. It wouldn't listen to me." I knew Emily didn't want to show me this vulnerable side of herself. But it seemed she couldn't hold back her overflowing emotions anymore. I wrapped my arms around her. "You've grown so much," I murmured, the simple truth making my chest tighten and my eyes sting. "Didn't I tell you?" "Leave it to me," I said firmly, taking off my shoes and gently pulling Emily to her feet. I led her to the sofa in the living room and helped her sit down. With a glance at Laura, who was in the kitchen, I silently asked for her support. She nodded slightly in response. "Emily, take it easy until 10 o'clock. At my words, Emily lifted her head. She glanced back and forth between the wall clock and my face before murmuring, "10 o'clock? I want you to watch a program I made, for the first time in a long while." Her eyes widened at my words. Just then, Laura placed a teacup in front of her. The rising steam and the soft scent of tea seemed to ease some of the tension in Emily's shoulders. Last night, clutching Emily's defaced uniform in my hand, I had raced to the TV station. The station was as noisy as ever. Even as it approached 9 p.m., people were bustling about with the same energy as they had during the day. Eventually, I found Michael, who was wrestling with the structure of the program he had recently sought my advice about. "What brings you here at this hour?" he asked, starting to stand as soon as he saw me. I placed a hand on his shoulder, motioning for him to sit back down. The program Michael was in charge of was scheduled to air at 10 a.m. the next day. It was the transitional time between the morning news show and the start of the afternoon programs. It was a slot where students would need to skip school to watch it. But from another perspective, it was precisely those kids who might feel they couldn't go to school that the program was meant for. "Is tomorrow's editing done?" Michael's expression soured as he responded. "Barely. Honestly, it looks like something we just threw together. And I can't help but feel disappointed in myself for having to air something so subpar." He slumped in his chair, the weight of his frustration apparent as he gulped down an energy drink. Though I felt for him, I couldn't help but pump my fist subtly under the desk. "Michael, do you still have the energy to redo it?" He raised his head, confusion etched across his face. Clearly, he didn't understand what I was getting at. The deflated Michael watched as I spread Emily's uniform across his desk, nodding firmly. "I'll handle the director, Mr. Miller. Program changes happen all the time, it's nothing to worry about. But I can't do this alone. Will you help me?" I grasped Michael's hand. And after a moment, he squeezed back. From that point, it became a race against time. We rewrote the script and revamped the program structure, getting approval from Mr. Miller, who had already gone home. Michael interviewed bank employees connected to the station, while I contacted students who were scheduled to appear the following week, asking them to adjust their schedules. It's been a while since we've done this kind of last-minute production. It was during the time we finished the narration recordings and were in the middle of editing the footage. Michael let out a sigh as he said those words. But his face was brighter. He was a far cry from the man slumping in despair just hours earlier. Now, he moved with renewed purpose. The students arrived at the station early in the morning before school. They discussed the revised topic in depth, helping bring the program to life. The editing was rushed, and we only managed a single review. Still, Michael smiled as he said, for the first time in a long while, I feel fulfilled. James, it's 10 o'clock. I had been busy notifying my supervisor about taking paid leave and asking Mr. Miller to review the final cut of the program. Apparently, the hour had flown by without me realizing it. Following Laura's silent gesture, I returned to the living room. When I turned on the TV, the students who had gathered early this morning were on screen, their expressions serious and focused. This is a program my junior colleague produces. But just for today, I got to handle it. As the narrator introduced the show's theme, the topic of the day appeared on screen. Academics? Dad, is this? Just watch. The topic I had proposed to Michael was academic background. Normally, the show included structured scripts and mandatory keywords to keep discussions focused. But due to the tight turnaround, the only script this time was a single page with the time slots for each segment. Perhaps because of this, the students' expressions were more intense than ever. The discussion began with a young woman who had just started college that year. I think a lot of people go to four-year universities without really knowing why. Not many have a clear purpose or something specific they want to learn. And even if they do, whether they can get into their desired university often depends on their family situation, she said. Her words elicited a range of reactions from the other students. Some pursed their lips, while others exchanged glances. Next to me, Emily leaned forward. Wow, this girl. She's only 18, but she's thought about all this, she whispered, clearly impressed. From there, the discussion brought out various perspectives, such as to contribute to society, because without academic credentials, some dreams might be out of reach, and because some people won't take you seriously unless you have knowledge. The show's host, the only working adult among them, asked, "How many of you think you might be laughed at for not having an academic background?" Beside me, I heard Emily sharply inhale. She leaned even closer to the screen, her attention fully absorbed. "I don't think so," the young woman who spoke first said clearly. Every other student strongly nodded in agreement, as if to affirm her conviction. "That's true, it really should be that way," the host said, giving the cue. At that moment, the footage switched. The screen showed the uniform Emily had received, accompanied by small gasps and murmurs of shock. When the camera returned to the studio, every student on set had a pained expression. Their eyes, as though looking at something repulsive, carried anger. One student, shaking with emotion, said, "Are we supposed to hold on to hope in a society with adults like this?" And with that, the program ended. This conclusion was exactly what I had wanted. I didn't want to force hope as if it were an obligation, nor did I want to use empty words or cheap tricks to offer comfort. I wanted the audience to see the reality of the world we were living in now. Daddy. Even after the program ended, she didn't move. The commercials began, and just as the host of the next program started their opening remarks, Emily called me again. "Thank you." Emily's voice was steady now, no longer trembling. She kept wiping her tears away with the hem of her suit as she stared straight at the TV. The program created a stir. This is the kind of era we live in. The design of the uniform alone made it easy to identify which bank it belonged to. The program gained traction on social media, which boosted its ratings. Michael later told me that the success of this episode led to a major change. He stopped scripting discussions entirely, instead letting students speak freely. Several bank executives came to our house to apologize, but I never joined those meetings. Emily, for her part, kept saying, "I'm fine with resigning voluntarily." As a bank, they didn't want to be seen as the villains. They tried hard to convince her to stay. Laura told me while hanging the laundry. But by then, neither Laura nor Emily seemed to care anymore. By the time Laura finished hanging the laundry, the conversation had shifted to whether the upcoming weekend would be sunny. "So, Daddy, I'll be staying here a little longer." "No, for the first time, I was able to do something for you. That makes me happy." Emily gave a small, dismissive laugh. That's not true, she said, standing up. My stubbornness, my preference for studying over sleeping, that's all because I take after you, Daddy. Emily? The reason I could hold on and not give up this time is because you and Mom worked so hard to raise me strong. Emily stepped back, lowered her head deeply, and spoke slowly. Thank you, Daddy. I'm sorry I was too proud to say it before. I remembered Emily's company induction ceremony 3 years ago. The weather today was even sunnier than back then. Just moments ago, Emily's room upstairs was emptied. The truck carrying all her belongings disappeared down the road. Starting tomorrow, Emily would be living on her own. She was leaving this house, beginning her journey away from Laura and me. The floral curtains in her now empty room had been replaced with plain navy ones we had stored in the closet. It's going to feel lonely. My words carried off by the spring breeze. Daddy, no, Dad, are you ready? Emily's voice called out from the entrance. Dressed casually in a shirt and jeans, she peeked in. Emily, are you really going like that? Well, I already packed all my dresses into boxes. But we're going to a hotel buffet, are we? She paused for a moment, then sighed. All right, I'll borrow something from Mom, she said, closing the door behind her. 3 years ago, Emily used to call me Daddy and Laura Mommy. Now, it was Dad and Mom. Around the same time, she also quit her job at the bank. Dad, eating too many carbs tires out your brain, Emily said, pointing at my plate piled with pilaf, carbonara, and curry soup. She sighed and shook her head. Lifestyle habits can lead to mental fatigue, too. You're not as active as you used to be, so you really need to watch out, she continued. Wow, Emily, as expected of an expert. Laura said with a smile, eating her salad beside Emily. When Emily left the bank 3 years ago, she took a break from everything for a few months. She focused on the basics, daily walks, and reflecting on what she truly wanted and needed to do. The bank? I only chose it because it seemed stable. She had said apologetically when she began studying to become a counselor. By the way, since we have the chance, can I ask why you decided to become a counselor, Emily? Laura, having finished her plate of salad, looked at Emily intently. Her gaze was gentle, yet tinged with a certain sadness. Of the two of us, Laura was taking Emily's independence harder. I got ahead of myself. You? Really? Laura and I asked in unison. Emily set down her fork and nodded slowly. I told myself it was stable, community-focused work. I got through job hunting faster than my peers and thought I had it all figured out. But honestly, I was being naive. She said, then turned her gaze to me. After everything that happened, and watching that program you created, I started asking myself, what were you trying to convey? Why did I have to go through what I did? That's when I thought, maybe there's someone only I can help. So that's when you decided to study counseling. The more I learn, the more fascinating it becomes. Emily said, shrugging with a smile. That smile made her look so strong and capable. She's going to be okay. For some reason, I just knew it. Of course, that didn't mean I had no worries. Would Emily, who had hardly cooked before, manage living on her own? Did she know how much daily expenses would cost? The concerns kept piling up. But after her rest, she started working multiple part-time jobs, studying counseling, and even contributing to the household. She had grown into someone stronger and brighter than I had ever seen. Even after receiving rejection notices again and again, she didn't lose hope. 3 months ago, she started working as a counselor at a private middle school with a newly established counseling center. Over the past 3 years, I've seen Emily's resilience. Now, I feel it's time to trust her. Well then, since we're asking questions, Emily said, straightening her posture and looking directly at me. What is it? Daddy. Dad, Why did you go from being a director to an office worker? Both Laura and I froze for a moment. Laura looked at me with concern, gauging my reaction. She told me you started working at the TV station because you wanted to bring positivity to a world filled with bad news. You had a clear dream. And you achieved it. So, what made you give up that position? Her expression growing more serious. She looked down, her voice trembling as she asked, "Was it because of me?" "You're right, Emily. I became a director because I wanted to create shows that made people laugh," I said, putting my spoon down and sitting up straight. Facing her directly, I continued. "But then I realized something. I was making you, the person I most wanted to be happy, feel lonely. Even without being on the production side, I could still contribute to TV programs. But I'm the only one who can make you, your mother, and our family smile. That's why I chose to step away." Emily lifted her face, her eyes brimming with tears. Laura gently placed a comforting hand on Emily's shoulder. He had no experience in office work. While he was still a director, he studied for his bookkeeping qualifications and learned administrative skills outside of his work hours. Handing Emily a handkerchief, Laura added with a smile, "Both you and James have a habit of pushing yourselves too hard. I've always worried about the two of you." Emily took the handkerchief from Laura and pressed it to her eyes. Her voice quivered as she said, "I didn't realize how loved I was." 6 months later, we received the pamphlet for the middle school where Emily worked. Next to the title "Full-Time Counselor" was a photo of Emily in her familiar gray suit, smiling confidently. After divorcing my wife Olivia, my daughter Laura continued living in America. A Japan lover, Laura moved here at the age of 25. Hoping to achieve her dream of working in Japan's publishing industry, she applied for a job at a certain company. However, the two interviewers belittled her at every turn. "A person who can't write Japanese working at a publisher. Your Japanese still needs a lot of work. You'll need to study harder if you want to communicate properly." Despite their nasty remarks, Laura managed to suppress her frustration. Even when she explained that she had Japanese nationality and was fluent in the language, they refused to listen. After mocking her endlessly, the interviewers informed her she was hired. But it was all part of a scheme they had concocted. Laura attended the company's induction ceremony, only to return home in tears and rage. "My employee ID says my name is incompetent," she said, her face filled with sorrow and anger. Hearing the full story, I stormed into the induction ceremony and declared, "Everyone's fired. The building's getting demolished. My name is Kevin Walker. I once had a beloved wife and daughter, but we divorced when my daughter was in elementary school. The reason for the divorce was clear. In my passion for work, I had put my family on the back burner. My wife, who had moved to Japan with me when we got married, eventually took our daughter and returned to her home country. But I felt no regret about my work. It was fulfilling, and I believed in its value. I hope to open doors to other cultures and become a bridge between countries worldwide." Laura inherited that same mindset. She is my only child, born to my foreign wife and me. I met my wife while working at a multinational corporation and living overseas as an expatriate. The locals were generally charming and friendly. I was drawn to their directness, their confidence in expressing opinions and intentions. Laura shares that same sociable nature, easily forming bonds with anyone and radiating a cheerful personality. But my wife and I divorced when Laura was in elementary school. "Thank you for working so hard, always coming home so late. But for a long time, I've felt like we've stopped talking as a couple. I don't think we're holding on to any reason to stay together. For our future, I think it's better we consider separate paths," she told me. I had caused my wife, who chose life in Japan over staying with her family and friends, to feel deeply lonely. So, I respected her decision. After our divorce, Laura moved with her mother to her mother's home country. Now, after about 15 years, Laura was moving back to Japan. I arrived at the airport, waiting near the gate where Laura's flight was scheduled to land, filled with joy and nervous anticipation. I had been so excited to reunite with her that I hadn't slept a wink the night before. When her flight finally landed, I scanned the passengers emerging from the gate, searching for her face. When Laura appeared, she waved enthusiastically and called out to me with a big smile. "Laura!" Overjoyed, Laura abandoned her large suitcase and ran straight toward me. "Dad!" We hugged, sharing the joy of our reunion. Hand in hand, we left the airport and headed home. Laura, who loves Japanese anime, manga, and food culture, dreams of using her language skills to work in Japan. I want to share the Japanese culture I love with the world. To help Laura take even a single step closer to her dream, I recommended a certain company. On our way home from the airport, we decided to stop by that company. "This is the company where you'll have an interview. I'm starting to feel nervous." "You'll be fine as long as you approach it with your usual cheerful personality." As we chatted, I suddenly felt someone's eyes on us. Looking in the direction of the gaze, I saw two people in suits staring at us. "Is there something you need?" "Ha!" The two chuckled dismissively at us. "Nice. A young, pretty foreign woman holding hands with you. She's my daughter." "Your daughter? You have a foreign daughter? A secret relationship, huh?" The woman whispered to her companion, just loud enough for us to hear. Although annoyed, I held back my anger, not wanting to set a bad example in front of Laura. "Do you work at this company?" "Yes, as you can see, it's a major corporation, not a place for the likes of you." "Hey, enough of this. Let it go, Laura." Laura, who has an outspoken personality typical of someone from abroad, cannot feel satisfied unless she clearly expresses what she thinks. She tried to convey her discomfort clearly. However, these two might be employees of the company she was going to work for. We couldn't afford to create a disadvantageous situation. However, as I sat next to my still irritated daughter, I clearly remembered. The two employee IDs had Harvey and Kristen written on them. Even after returning home, Laura's frustration lingered. "Dad, I don't want to go to that company." "Don't let it bother you. Those two were the problem, not the company. There are plenty of talented people there." "Are you sure?" "I guarantee it." One day, I found Laura practicing for her interview in the living room, her expression tense. She was organizing her strengths and experiences, jotting down ideas for how to present herself effectively. "Dad, can you play the interviewer?" "Of course. Let's start with an introduction, shall we?" "Hello, I'm Laura." She said this as she extended her hand to openly shake hands with me, the interviewer. Laura, in Japan, after greeting the interviewer, you're expected to bow. Then, wait for them to say, "Please take a seat," before sitting. Shaking hands isn't customary. Really? That sounds so formal. Well, compared to America, it is. Oh, and don't forget to knock on the door 3 times before entering. There are all sorts of peculiar customs. I drilled her on the basics of interview etiquette. Next, let's work on how to answer questions. How about that one? It's a good start, but maybe include more specific examples to make it stronger. Laura anticipated common interview questions and prepared thoughtful answers, refining them based on my feedback. With every practice session, her confidence grew, and her responses became sharper. All right. Let's give it another try. Laura practiced over and over again, determined to face the interview day with confidence. Finally, the day of the interview arrived. In the morning, Laura prepared herself, her heart brimming with both nerves and anticipation. Laura, have confidence. No matter the outcome, you'll be okay. I smiled at her and gave her a light pat on the shoulder. Encouraged by my words, Laura walked out with her head held high. What follows is the story I heard from my daughter. As she entered the interview room, Laura was shocked. Nice to meet you. We've met before, haven't we? You're the girl who tried to talk big last time. How bold of you to show up for an interview. The interviewers sitting across from her were Harvey and Kristen, the same people who had treated us rudely before. My apologies. Well, it's fine. Please have a seat. Thank you. Laura decided to stay composed and keep her focus. So, where are you from? I was born in Japan, but when I was 8, my parents divorced. After that, I lived with my mother in her home country. Ah, that makes sense. You seem like a strong-willed young lady. So, how serious are people in your mother's country about their work? In Japan, efficiency and quality are paramount. How is it there? Though momentarily surprised by Kristen's question, Laura calmly explained the work ethic in her mother's homeland. However, Harvey and Kristen continued to ask questions laden with prejudices about her nationality and culture. I heard people from your country are lax about time. Is that true? Being late would be a big problem here. Despite Laura's effort to defend her roots, the atmosphere grew heavier. By the way, can you even speak Japanese? Can you write Japanese? Harvey bombarded her with rapid-fire questions. Yes, I speak Japanese, English, and French. However, since I've spent more time abroad, I'm not great at writing it. Someone who can't write wants to work at a publishing company? How did you even think of applying? And your Japanese isn't good enough either. You need to study more to communicate effectively. Kristen's unexpected remarks left Laura stunned and disheartened. The rest of the interview continued with similar questions about her mother's country. It felt as if my ex-wife's country and culture were somehow unsuited to Japanese corporate environments. After the interview, Laura felt crushed, questioning whether all her hard work had been in vain. What hurt her most were the unfair questions and comments born out of cultural misunderstandings and prejudice. The experience left her feeling deeply stressed and uncomfortable. I hate this. I worked so hard to prepare for this interview, and it ended like this? Working here was my dream. Tearing up, she stared at the atrium and the lobby for a while. Once she calmed down, she decided to leave. But just as she was about to go, she heard her name called from behind. Laura! It was Kristen, the rude interviewer. Yes? I thought I should give you this. Kristen handed her an envelope. When Laura opened it, she found a preliminary job offer letter inside. What does this mean? In today's global age, we need someone like you. We couldn't risk letting another company take you, so we issued the letter immediately. Laura couldn't hide her confusion at Kristen's sudden change in attitude. Once your employment is officially confirmed, we'll send you details about the induction ceremony via email. Overwhelmed with joy, Laura floated on air, realizing she had actually been offered the job. When she got home, she ran straight to me. Dad, guess what? I got the offer. To be honest, I was stunned. I've never heard of that company offering a same-day job offer. But there it was, Laura's name unmistakably written on the document. I would later regret not scrutinizing the contents of that letter more carefully at the time. On the day of the induction, our house was filled with excitement. Laura woke up early, got ready, and dressed neatly in a suit. Her face reflected a mix of nerves and anticipation. It's time to leave. Seeing Laura in her new suit, I felt an overwhelming sense of pride. Just as I had done on her interview day, I smiled warmly and gave her an encouraging pat on the back as she headed out the door. But Laura was back home almost immediately. Did you forget something? The induction has just started. Why are you back so soon? No. It's not that. My employee ID, it says incompetent. What? Incompetent? When she explained what had happened, my hands trembled with anger. At the company lobby, new employees had gathered to collect their ID cards before heading to the venue. One by one, they approached the gate, scanning their cards at the reader to enter. However, when Laura tried to pass through, an error message appeared on the gate display, barring her entry. When she checked her ID, her face went pale. Instead of her name, the card had incompetent printed on it. Staff and other employees rushed over, trying to figure out what was going on, but everyone stood frozen in shock. Then came the distinct sound of high heels clicking against the floor, and Kristen appeared. "I've heard about the situation. Oops. My apologies, it seems there was a mistake in issuing your card. Your name isn't on the new employee list." "What? What does that mean?" "Oh, didn't I tell you? What you received was just a preliminary offer. Basically, it is a verbal agreement. It wasn't an official job offer. I guess you didn't understand the Japanese. See, we found a more capable candidate than you, so we decided not to proceed with you." Laura couldn't muster a single word. "The ID card must have been sent to you by mistake while we were fooling around. That's cruel, why would you do this?" Whispers of disapproval could be heard from the other employees watching the scene unfold. "This is your fault. You tried to stand up to me." With tears streaming down her face, Laura dropped everything she was holding and ran out of the building. "When I heard the full story, I couldn't sit still. I headed straight for the company." Meanwhile, in a meeting room behind the induction venue, final preparations were underway. "Kristen, about the incident in the lobby earlier, are you sure this is okay? If Mr. Walker, the CEO, hears about this, it'll be a serious issue." "It's fine. Mr. Walker won't find out. Honestly, who knows or cares where he is right now? I don't have time for these trivial matters." Kristen sneered. "Why did you even do that? You could have just rejected her outright." This company gets flooded with applications, doesn't it? Most of them aren't even close to qualified. Reviewing resumes and conducting interviews is such a hassle." Nathan, a male employee, questioned Kristen's approach and attempted to discuss it from a moral standpoint. "But still, making her go through all that wasn't necessary. Those girls with a superiority complex from living abroad irritate me. I wanted to send a message. Unqualified people shouldn't even think about applying here. Do you really think that's the right approach?" Kristen coldly justified her actions. "If it stops the unqualified ones from coming, it's better for us, isn't it? It makes our jobs easier. But you've caused her so much distress." "Maybe, but sometimes sacrifices have to be made for our benefit. Pursuing personal gain at the expense of others damages the organization's credibility and the atmosphere within the workplace." Everyone present likely felt the same way. Suddenly, a staff member came running into the room. "Kristen." "Oh, Andrew from General Affairs. What's the rush? Look at this. What have you done?" Andrew held up his phone, its screen displaying a social media post. Kristen's face turned pale as she glanced at it. What is this?" Someone had recorded the entire incident with Laura and uploaded it online. The video spread like wildfire, with the comment section full of harsh criticism. "Quit, old lady. You're the real incompetent one. Share this. Let her face the consequences." The viewers online seemed to voice exactly what everyone in the lobby had felt. The video made it undeniably clear who was truly a liability to the company. Kristen clutched her head, bowing under the weight of the situation. "What are we supposed to do now? This has gone viral in such a short time, and the induction is about to start. For now, we'll proceed with the induction as planned to avoid further chaos." Despite the disruption, the induction ceremony began, albeit delayed. The event carried on as if nothing had happened. The executives stood on stage to conduct the ceremony. They offered words of welcome to the new employees, accompanied by encouraging messages. Harvey, a key member of the HR team, stepped forward to give a formal address. "Dear new employees, I deeply apologize for the earlier incident. However, I believe that challenges like these are opportunities to learn and grow. I trust that all of you will use this experience to become stronger and more united as you move forward." I couldn't help but scoff internally at his hypocrisy. You are now part of this company, and I sincerely hope you will carry the pride and responsibility of being one of us, facing challenges head-on and achieving success together. The room erupted in applause. During the oath ceremony, the new employees raised their hands together, pledging loyalty and dedication to the company. The sense of unity and determination swept through the hall, creating a touching moment. But Laura wasn't there. Her absence, and the injustice she had faced, made my blood boil. Next, we will hear from Mr. Walker, our CEO, who will address our new employees. My name was called, and I stepped up to the stage. "That man, wasn't he outside earlier?" "Yes, I am the CEO of this company. By the way, the chairman is my father." Originally, he was supposed to give the speech, but after some pleading, I managed to get permission to say a few words myself. "Welcome to the company. Here, we hold ethical behavior as one of our highest values. Those who fail to uphold these standards will find they do not align with our principles." I sharpened my tone, imagining a certain someone. "I urge all of you to always act with integrity and honesty. This is the foundation of our growth and prosperity as an organization." With that, I glared at Harvey's face. The image of Harvey's pale face is burned into my memory and won't fade. I took a deep breath and continued. "However, today, someone acted unethically, and no one stepped in to stop it. Those who only look out for themselves or turn a blind eye to wrongdoing have no place here. As of now, they are all dismissed, effective immediately." And we'd tear down the building. The room buzzed with shock and whispers. Ignoring the uproar, I walked off the stage. "Mr. Walker. What an incredible speech, truly inspiring." Harvey, in stark contrast to his earlier arrogance, approached me with a sycophantic tone. "Excuse me? I mean..." I sincerely apologize for my behavior the other day. "I didn't realize she was your daughter. So, if she wasn't my daughter, it would have been okay to mistreat her?" I pressed Harvey with a barrage of questions, almost as if I were firing them off. "No, that's not what I meant. Enough. Bring Kristen here now." Kristen, barely able to stand without support, was brought before me. "Yes. Mr. Walker, I deeply apologize. Please forgive me. Don't think you have another chance. You're fired, both of you. Leave now and never come back." With that, I formally terminated Harvey and Kristen. Immediately afterward, I faced stern reprimand from my father, the chairman. "We are responsible for the lives of our employees and their families. Do not make rash statements." "Understood." "But those two were..." "Yes, those two can go. But protect everyone else." "I'll retract my statement right away." I quickly retracted my broader statement about dismissing others, focusing instead on safeguarding the livelihoods of the remaining employees. The incident caused a stir online, with some labeling us an evil company. However, thanks to the loyalty of our team, not a single new employee chose to leave. We took this opportunity to re-evaluate and clearly define our corporate philosophy and values. By aligning our actions with these principles, we began the journey to rebuild trust. Additionally, we ramped up social contributions and community support initiatives to demonstrate our commitment to society. Meanwhile, Harvey and Kristen struggled to rebuild their careers. "So, you've worked in publishing before?" Yes, that's right. I used to work at a publishing company." "That explains it. Your name sounded familiar." "Unfortunately, we don't hire individuals who lack ethics. Please leave." Harvey was at a loss for words, his face showing a look of confusion. He reflected on the wrongs he had committed, his heart shaken by a mix of regret and anger. At home, Kristen gazed out the window, heaving a deep sigh. Like Harvey, she struggled to find employment. Moreover, since the video remains permanently as a digital tattoo, it led to people on the street whispering and casting glances, saying, "That's the person from the video." The constant attention and murmurs began to eat away at her heart, and Kristen gradually started withdrawing from the outside world. A year passed. My company steadily regained public trust. As for Laura, she decided to test her abilities once more, retaking the job application process and earning her position entirely on her own merit. "Dad, thank you for standing up for me back then, even saying you'd tear down the building." "Yeah, maybe I went a bit overboard." Our corporate philosophy remains steadfast. We are to act as a bridge between Japan and the world, spreading Japanese culture globally and empowering Japanese individuals to shine on both domestic and international stages. I used to be a world-famous pianist. Now, I keep that part of my life hidden, attending my daughter's piano recitals simply as a supportive father who loves her music. When it was her turn to perform, she nervously started playing. But then, a sudden power outage plunged the entire venue into darkness. The audience panicked, and my young daughter was overwhelmed, crying and shaking in distress. To calm her, I began playing the piano amidst the chaos. Applause erupted from every corner of the room. My name is Michael Scott. I work part-time as a university administrator. I live with my wife Sophie, who is a high school music teacher, and our daughter Emma, who just started elementary school. Since I work part-time, I have shorter hours and earn less than Sophie. On top of that, I've placed countless burdens on her over the years. I can't say I've been a good husband to her. Sophie and I have been together since college, but I've always been the type to struggle with self-doubt and rely on her support. The best I can do for her is to take on the role of a homemaker, using my extra time to create a comfortable living environment for her busy life. Our daughter Emma is a kind child who never mocks me, even though I may seem like a feeble father to others. I feel truly blessed to have people around me who stand by me. My current job was only possible thanks to a friend's recommendation. After experiencing a major failure in my past, I lost my ability to trust others or open up to them. I spent years avoiding people, retreating into my own shell. While many distanced themselves from me in disappointment, Sophie stayed by my side, supporting our life together. In our musically inclined household, there is an electric piano. Part of the reason is that Sophie, as a music teacher, finds it useful for her work. Occasionally, she requests that I play the piano. It's a tradition that dates back to our days as college sweethearts. She always makes these requests during quiet moments, after our daughter has gone to bed. Out of gratitude for all she does, I try to fulfill her requests. Though my playing, relying on skills I haven't practiced in years, never feels satisfying. The lingering guilt I carry toward her inevitably colors the music I produce. After playing, I often glance at her face. She'll be sitting with her eyes gently closed. I know, it must be unbearable to listen to, right? I can't help but say this every time, driven by my lack of confidence. But her response is always the same, unwavering. I truly love your piano. No matter what emotions you pour into it. I still have a certain level of skill when it comes to playing the piano. However, I would never perform in front of an audience, not anymore. To be honest, I can't bring myself to do it. Even when Sophie requests that I play, I've never let our daughter be present for it, not even once. But whether it's because of her lineage or the environment she's grown up in, something changed when my daughter, Emma, reached second grade. She finally said it herself, I want to play the piano. From then on, she began playing beside Sophie before bed. What started as a monthly habit grew to weekly, then every 3 days, until it became a daily routine. At first, I pretended not to notice, glancing sideways as Emma played. But I couldn't help but notice how quickly she was improving at the piano. At first, I thought it was simply because of Sopi's excellent teaching. But it became clear that Emma was absorbing everything she was taught at an incredible pace. With her strong desire to learn, we decided to let her try a trial lesson at a piano school. The school had produced many professional pianists. When Emma performed there, her teacher, Ms. Johnson, praised her profusely and eagerly offered to mentor her. "Daddy, I want to learn piano here. I love playing with Mommy, but she's so busy with work. If I practice here and at home, it'll be easier for her, right?" Faced with her reasoning, I left the decision to Sopi. The next day, Emma began attending the piano school twice a week after school. As Emma became more immersed in piano, I felt an unease slowly growing in my heart. Perhaps I had always been afraid of this. As Emma became more passionate about the piano, I couldn't ignore how deeply she was diving into it. Once, I too had been praised relentlessly by adults, lifted high on a pedestal. But after a crushing failure, those same people turned their backs on me without hesitation, leaving me utterly alone. Now, I depend on Sopi for everything, even the foundation of our daily life. What I fear most is that Emma might follow the same path I did and make the same mistakes. If possible, I hope she can be like her mother, using her talent in ways that benefit others. However, what started as piano lessons twice a week soon became daily classes, thanks to the dedication of her teacher, Ms. Johnson. I found myself watching Emma's eager figure disappear out the door each day. Late at night, as I listened to the sound of her playing just before bed, I noticed something extraordinary. Her youthful energy and immense talent were undeniable. Even the way she played bore subtle similarities to my own. It was thrilling, but at the same time, I couldn't shake the fear of watching Emma be showered with praise, knowing all too well the harsh reality that often accompanies such acclaim. With admiration comes envy, and with envy come cruel criticisms and spiteful rumors. Hearing the applause for Emma took me back to my own days of promise, before I stumbled and fell. Looking back, I realize I had been oblivious, unaware of the struggles that awaited me. Then, one day, Emma returned from her first piano competition with a trophy. When I came home, I found her and Sopi in the living room, still dressed up, excitedly holding the trophy. "Daddy! Look! I won first place." Sophie, aware of my concerns about Emma's situation, had intentionally kept the competition a secret. She probably knew I would have objected. Seeing Emma's innocent joy, I couldn't help but tear up as I hugged her. "Yes, I know. I've been listening to your music every day. I'm sorry I couldn't be there, but you did an amazing job." "Daddy, why are you crying?" "Sometimes people cry when they're deeply moved." I tried to brush it off with a simple answer, but Sopi saw through me. She understood that my fears were beginning to come true. Emma had real talent, far beyond what I had ever possessed. And yet, my greatest wish was for her to avoid the same pitfalls I had encountered. Of course, I wanted to nurture her gift. But what do you think? Do you think Emma can overcome it? Can she avoid ending up like me? I didn't want Emma to be crushed under the weight of endless expectations and hidden agendas, losing herself in the process. "You know," Sopi began, "the reason she became interested in piano was because she used to listen to you play from her bed. She probably noticed that your sound is different from mine." I was stunned by this revelation. "But you've never played the piano in front of her, nor do you ever talk about it." She said, "Daddy's better at piano than Mommy. But he doesn't seem to like it." Then, she wrapped her arms tightly around me from behind. "Emma inherited her talent from you. But don't forget, she's my daughter too. She won't necessarily follow the same path you did. She'll be okay." As always, Sopi was there to support me, lifting me up during my moments of doubt. Feeling a bit frustrated, I muttered, "I wonder if there's anything I can do." Sophie just smiled and gave me some advice. "She's been feeling like her practice at home isn't enough lately. She's at a level where a teacher can't guide her much anymore. Why don't you try sitting beside her and see how it goes?" After hearing that, I started watching Emma play the piano from behind. When she noticed I was nearby, she began playing as if directing the music toward me. It felt like she was inviting me to join her, as though saying, "Let's play together." I took her up on the invitation and enjoyed a duet with my daughter. Since then, our conversations during practice increased, and I started pointing out things I noticed. Emma seemed to love this new dynamic. She started calling me over every time she practiced, turning it into a daily ritual. While most kids eventually lose interest and quit, Emma only grew more devoted to piano as she got older. Because of this, Emma would rush home immediately after school, having already finished all her homework during the day. Her routine consisted of lessons at the piano school, followed by practice at home with my guidance until just before bedtime, interrupted only by meals and bath time. On weekends, I would coach her, and she would spend the rest of the time refining her skills through self-practice. Even at her young age, Emma didn't seem to find anything unusual about dedicating her entire life to piano. However, to other children and parents with different values, her lifestyle likely seemed strange, even extreme. Emma had friends at school, but she always declined their invitations to hang out after school or on weekends. One day, I was unexpectedly approached by the parent of one of Emma's friends, who said this to me. "I heard from my child that Emma spends all her time practicing piano after school." Poor thing. Why don't you let her play with her friends once in a while? I knew that other adults, hearing these stories, probably assumed we were forcing Emma to focus on piano. But whenever they saw her perform or heard her express her passion for piano, those criticisms quickly faded away. In fact, some parents started praising Emma's extraordinary talent while also showing a hint of envy toward us. "Your daughter is amazing. I heard she won another competition. Her future must be so bright, I'm so jealous. Thank you. But am I satisfied with this situation? Not at all, it's quite the opposite. To be honest, I wished Emma would push back against the grueling routine of piano practice. I wanted her to rebel against my guidance, skip practice once in a while, and spend her afternoons playing carefree with her friends after school. I hope she could enjoy the kind of ordinary, everyday life that most children take for granted. But Emma was different. Not once had she ever said she wanted to quit piano. Recently, I heard that some of her classmates had started calling her Pro Emma as a playful nickname. It seemed that even the kids recognized her dedication, comparing her almost to a professional musician. Emma didn't mind the teasing. In fact, she handled it with the confidence of someone far beyond her years. "You don't even know the latest trends, Pro Emma. You're only interested in piano, right?" Even with such light-hearted teasing from her classmates, Emma remained completely unfazed. "Well, I don't need to know trends to have fun every day. And being called a pro isn't so bad, you know?" With her cheerful smile and carefree response, Emma effortlessly silenced the teasing, further solidifying her reputation as someone to be admired at school. She advanced smoothly through the preliminary and regional rounds of a nationally held piano solo competition, securing her place in the finals. She smoothly advanced to the finals of the national competition. At the national competition, surrounded by a multitude of highly skilled performers, Emma, in her very first appearance, achieved an incredible upset by winning the grand prize in the piano solo division, sending the venue into a frenzy of excitement. The grand prize is a rank above the gold award, the highest accolade, but it is not awarded every year. Emma had surpassed all expectations, achieving what most could only dream of. I was there in the audience, witnessing the excitement and applause that erupted in the hall. But as others cheered, I sat stunned, unable to fully process the scale of her accomplishment. When we returned home, stepping through the front door brought a sense of relief. Suddenly, all the emotions I had been suppressing surged, and tears began streaming down my face. "Daddy, are you okay? Are you feeling sick?" Emma asked, peering up at me with concern. "No, Emma. I think I'm just much happier than you can imagine. Sensing my turmoil, Sophie took Emma by the hand and gave me space to process everything alone. The grand prize Emma had won was the one title I had never been able to achieve in my competitive days. My daughter had far surpassed the level of skill I once possessed. I was forced to confront the reality that, like everyone else, I had also started to view my own daughter with a gaze of admiration and envy. When I experienced Emma's talent up close, I had a moment of clarity. Instead of pure joy, what overwhelmed me was the realization of my complete defeat. At that same moment, the tiny remnants of pride I had clung to shattered completely, falling away along with my tears. Caught between the heartfelt pride of wanting to congratulate her and the bitter feeling of why wasn't it me? I couldn't calm the storm of emotions inside me. Until those feelings subsided and I could fully come to terms with everything. I locked myself in a room and cried until there were no tears left to shed. That night, perhaps exhausted from giving her all at the competition, Emma skipped her usual piano practice. Instead, the three of us lay side by side, enjoying a rare moment of peace. The sounds of the city occasionally drifted in through the window, carried by a gentle, refreshing night breeze. Emma suddenly asked me why I didn't play the piano with my face still in tears. Back then, I got carried away. I didn't realize it at the time, but everything was going so smoothly. I had your mom, who always understood and supported me, by my side, and I kept winning competitions. I was satisfied with just that. I couldn't bring myself to meet Emma's gaze, feeling too ashamed, but I continued to speak. Although I often talked with Emma about piano, I had always avoided discussing my past. But at that moment, I felt the urge to tell her everything, no more holding back. However, doing so meant exposing my own failures and confronting the pain of my past. In Japan, I had been undefeated, winning competition after competition. But when I went abroad as a professional, I quickly realized I couldn't measure up at all. The praise and admiration I had grown accustomed to vanished entirely, replaced by a storm of harsh criticism. Is that supposed to be the best Japan has to offer? It really shows how low the standards of Japanese classical music are. The precision in his touch is flawless, but there's no emotion in the tone. It's like a machine is playing. If that's all it takes to call yourself a professional, there's no need to come all the way here. Just go back to your country. Don't ever show your face here again. Unable to accept the harsh reality, I was shaken and painfully aware of my naivety. Struggling against the pride I had built so high for myself, I drowned my sorrows in alcohol. In a fit of recklessness, I spiraled out of control, and despite being in a completely broken and miserable condition, I still entered a competition. As a result, the content of the terrible performance and then the appalling behavior was the top news story back in my country. When I found out after returning home, the humiliation and shock tore apart my flimsy pride and fragile mental state. I withdrew from both the piano and people, isolating myself from everyone. The only person who stayed by my side was Sophie, my then girlfriend, who later became my wife. Out of shame and guilt, I tried breaking up with her countless times, but she accepted everything about me and eventually became my wife. That's why I am who I am today, thanks to Sophie, who never abandoned me. Oh my, looks like she was nervous too. She's already fallen asleep. Emma, who had been so curious, was now lying beside me, her soft breaths audible as she slept, using my arm as a pillow. Looking at her innocent face, I couldn't help but smile. I wonder how much she heard. Who knows? But lately, you've been playing for Emma, haven't you? Your tone has changed. Haven't you noticed? Honestly, I hadn't realized it myself, but maybe, unconsciously. I was aware that Emma might be listening to my late-night piano sessions for her mother. However, Emma never joined her mother to listen to my midnight playing again. According to Emma, that was for her mom. The remarkable achievement Emma accomplished quickly spread throughout the public, with TV stations and other media outlets sending interview requests. For a while, things were quite hectic around us. However, we made an effort to ensure that Emma could continue living her life as normally as possible while celebrating her accomplishment in a modest way. The simplicity seemed to help Emma feel more at ease, as she was still adjusting to the sudden changes in her environment. As soon as Emma's name appeared among the performers, tickets sold out on the same day. Emma swiftly shifted her focus and concentrated on preparing for the upcoming concert, practicing as diligently as ever. Finally, the day of the commemorative concert for the competition winners arrived. The winners from various categories, dressed elegantly, performed their chosen pieces. At times graceful and at times lively, their performances delighted the audience. Having pulled off the competition's most stunning upset, Emma had now become one of the most talked about rising stars in the industry. As Emma's turn approached, the atmosphere in the hall grew increasingly electrified, filled with both anticipation and tension. Everyone eagerly awaited her performance. Even Emma, who was usually calm, seemed affected by the unusual atmosphere. Apart from the moments when she faced the piano, she had been noticeably nervous lately. The level of attention directed at her was far beyond anything she had experienced before. Normally, I wouldn't have felt too concerned about Emma, but this time, something about her demeanor left me uneasy. For that reason, instead of sitting in the audience, I stayed backstage with the other performers. On this day, Emma, who was usually more talkative than me, was completely silent and didn't smile at all. She seemed overwhelmed by the atmosphere. Then, it was finally Emma's turn. When her name was called, she let go of my hand, which she had been holding out of anxiety, straightened her back, and walked toward the piano with unwavering determination. The audience erupted into thunderous applause to welcome the performer they had been eagerly waiting for. As the applause died down, the entire hall held its breath, watching as Emma began her performance. At first glance, there didn't seem to be any issues with her playing. However, there was a slight stiffness in her finger movements, which subtly affected the tone. As the piece approached the section where it was supposed to pick up momentum, something unexpected happened. Suddenly, the entire hall was plunged into darkness as if a veil had been dropped, obscuring everyone's vision. The only lights remaining were those of the emergency exits. At first, the audience and I thought this might be part of the performance, a dramatic effect of some kind. But when the lights didn't come back on, it became clear this wasn't a planned feature. Confusion spread like wildfire, and the room quickly descended into a mix of uncertainty and unease. Taking out my phone, I checked to see if there was any network interference. There wasn't. Realizing that the issue was with the venue, I became increasingly concerned about Emma, who was left alone on the stage during this emergency. Turning on my phone's flashlight, I made my way toward her. Emma, startled by the unexpected situation, was quietly trembling, trying her best to stay composed. I had experienced a similar situation as an adult, but Emma was still an elementary school student. It was only natural for her to be frightened. Gradually, other members of the audience began turning on their phone flashlights. But the combined light was far from enough to illuminate the stage fully. However, this unexpected turn of events worked in Emma's favor since she was less visible to the audience. "Emma, it's okay. I'm here." The sudden changes in her surroundings and the unexpected circumstances must have pushed her stress to the limit, causing her to finally break down. Perhaps feeling reassured by my presence, Emma, who had been holding back and trembling quietly, burst into tears. But this was a sign of her releasing the tension. I gently rubbed her back and let her cry until she calmed down. Sometimes, letting it all out is quicker and easier than bottling it up. Just like that day when I couldn't hold back my own emotions after Emma won the grand prize at the competition. At the venue, the unexpected situation had thrown the audience and the other participants' children into a panic. It wasn't just the audience and contestants who were flustered, the concert staff were also scrambling, their shouts of frustration echoing backstage. "Hey! What's going on here? What's the lighting crew doing? Somewhere on stage, a backstage staff member's angry voice rang out, its force making Emma flinch and tremble as she started crying again. "I'm sorry. Everything was fine just a moment ago. Save the excuses. Just fix it quickly." It seemed like all the lighting and electrical systems were down. Even tapping the microphone yielded no sound, it wasn't powered on. "Ladies and gentlemen, we sincerely apologize for the inconvenience. We are working to restore the equipment. For your safety, please remain seated." In the noisy, chaotic venue, with no microphones working, the concert staff had to raise their voices to guide the audience. "Daddy, what should I do?" Emma clung to me, her hands still trembling slightly, her teary voice filled with anxiety. Right now, she wasn't the prodigy everyone called a genius girl. She was just a young schoolgirl, scared by the sudden emergency. Despite the abrupt changes in her environment, TV interviews and strangers approaching her, Emma had always managed to respond politely and properly, even at her young age. But I could tell she was pushing herself too hard, trying to meet everyone's expectations. As her father, I didn't want her to rush into adulthood just to keep up with others' demands. After all, her childhood had been anything but ordinary since she started playing the piano. "Do you think the concert's ruined? Will I have to finish without playing?" Even in this situation, Emma was longing to play the piano. Perhaps, more than the environmental changes, her biggest source of stress was the frustration of not being able to play right now. With me by her side, her trembling had stopped before I even realized it. "Emma, how about we do our usual routine while we wait for the lights to come back on?" The venue was still chaotic and loud, so a bit of piano playing wouldn't make much difference in the noise. Even as I questioned the absurdity of my suggestion, my main concern was calming my daughter. I could feel her nod in agreement as she wiped her tears in my arms. Just as Emma had once invited me to play along with her on the piano, I used my phone's flashlight to illuminate the keys, sat down next to her, and played a note toward her. Eager to play, Emma quickly adjusted herself and began playing along. In the dark, her smile returned as she played a duet with me. The stiffness from her anxiety melted away, and her fingers glided smoothly over the keys. In fact, she seemed even more confident and lively than before. With only the faint light from my phone, Emma played joyfully, just like during our usual playtime. Amid the ongoing commotion, some of the audience began noticing the piano sounds. They directed their phone lights toward the stage. Gradually, more people started listening intently, and the noisy venue grew quieter as the audience focused on the music. What had started as playful improvisation between father and daughter evolved into a mini performance, with us switching formations and adding flair. Sensing the calming atmosphere, I transitioned to a softer, more soothing melody, and Emma adapted her playing to match. The soothing performance of a parent and child sharing a single piano resonated throughout the venue, dissolving the unease in the air. Before long, Emma took the lead, transitioning into a piece her mother often requested, a song she had played many times but never as a duet with me. This was our first attempt at playing it together. The melody, chosen to match the calm and peaceful atmosphere of the late hour, seemed perfectly suited to the current situation. Its effect was so profound that even a few of the staff members, busy managing the crisis, stopped in their tracks to listen. Amid the tranquil music, I heard the sound of hurried footsteps approaching us. It was likely a senior concert staff member, coming to see who was playing the piano unprompted on the stage. Realizing it wasn't an intruder but one of the performers and her family, they gave a polite nod before quietly leaving. "I'll make sure to apologize later." For now, I was simply relieved to see Emma's smile gradually returning. As a faint light slowly began to illuminate the stage, our impromptu piano session came to a close. Before the stage lights fully illuminated, I gently lifted my hands from the keys, signaling the end of our duet. "Our piano time is already over?" I smiled at Emma, who spoke wistfully, and said, "Emma, now the real performance begins." After all, this was a concert for the competition winners, and the stage was hers as the grand prize recipient. Wait, just a moment. A flustered concert staff member hurried onto the stage. It was the same person who had approached us earlier in the dark. "Ah, I'm sorry for playing without permission." The sudden power outage had me worried about my daughter. Assuming I was about to be reprimanded for our impromptu performance, I quickly apologized. "No, that's not it. The issue is, it seems we'll need a bit more time to restore power. So, for now. Does that mean the concert is canceled?" Our conversation on stage started stirring murmurs of concern among the audience. The stage was the brightest spot in the room, but the rest of the venue remained dimly lit with only a few scattered lights. "No, not canceled. But if I may ask a favor, could you help us fill another 30 minutes until everything is back up?" "Emma, looks like we get to play a bit longer," I said, turning to her. "Really? Yay! Daddy, let's go." Her face lit up with a radiant smile as she beckoned me over to the piano, just like during practice sessions at home. This child truly loves playing the piano. The staff member used a megaphone to explain the situation to the audience. While apologizing for the outage, they announced an impromptu exhibition performance to entertain the crowd until the issue was resolved. I seated Emma, the star of the show, and let her start with the first notes. Standing beside her, I leaned slightly and joined in the performance. Once again, the sounds of our father-daughter duet filled the venue. To everyone's surprise, the power was restored sooner than expected, and the lights illuminated the audience. Taking it as a cue, we brought our performance to an end. The crowd erupted into a thunderous ovation and cheers. As I bowed and prepared to leave the stage, Emma tugged at my hand, stopping me. At that moment, the MC, now holding a microphone, walked up to us. Well, we had an unexpected outage, but during that time, we were treated to a wonderful performance. Let's give them another round of applause. The MC began praising me, saying, "Not only is your daughter talented, but it seems her father is just as skilled." Sensing the tension building, I decided to leave the stage before they could start asking too many questions. "Wait a moment, could you be Michael Smith? The world-renowned." As the MC's voice echoed through the venue, murmurs spread among the audience. "Her father is that Michael Smith? No wonder his daughter is so amazing. Smith. I've heard that name somewhere before. Michael Smith, the name I once carried, and the name synonymous with my greatest humiliation on the global stage. The last time I played in front of such a large audience was at an international competition where I made a fool of myself. My shabby appearance, including my intoxicated state of dress, decorum, and style of play, made me an easy target for the Japanese elite who have hit the wall of the world and fallen all the way down. In that sense, perhaps I was world-renowned after all. Meeting you here is such a surprise. Since you're here, could you play just one piece for us, for the future pianists in the audience?" The MC, brimming with excitement, implored me to perform, leaving me at a loss. "No, tonight is a concert for the competition winners," I tried to decline politely. Before I could finish, Emma chimed in. "Daddy, I think I need a little break. If you could play for me, it would really help." Her playful request, tinged with a childlike charm, drew laughter from the audience. "Well, your daughter has spoken, and I think everyone here would love to hear you play." The MC, visibly sweating, was working hard to hype up the atmosphere. The audience, caught up in the excitement, added their voices to the growing expectations directed at the stage. The staff, too, seemed eager to recover from the disruption caused by the power outage, doing everything they could to salvage the concert. Backstage, the crew continued to move tirelessly in the dim light, managing the unexpected crisis without pause. "Well, since we're short on time, I'll play just one short piece," I said. The audience responded with welcoming applause. As the clapping subsided, the venue grew silent, leaving only me and the piano at the center of the stage. I chose a piece that reflected my genuine feelings at that moment, without any pretense. The selection was Gratitude from Grieg's Lyric Pieces, Book 7. It was a tribute to everyone who contributed, visibly or behind the scenes, to making this dazzling stage possible. When I finished playing, the room was so quiet it felt like time had stopped. The silence stretched on, feeling almost endless, before erupting into a thunderous wave of applause and cheers. The audience rose to their feet, filling the venue with resounding ovations. Standing on stage, I was enveloped by the warmth of their praise. Filled with gratitude, I gave a deep bow and left the stage, carrying the echoes of their applause with me. The concert resumed smoothly afterward and concluded without further issues. As I watched Emma's performance, something long dormant within me seemed to stir back to life. Months later, I turned on the television to see the broadcast of an interview we had recently given. Today's guests are a father-daughter piano duo, Michael and Emma Scott. The accident at the competition had drawn media attention, and since then, Emma and I had begun making a living as a pianist duo. I was relieved to shed the burden of being world-renowned and felt much happier being recognized simply as a father-daughter pianists. Sophie, too, supported our journey, stepping back from her teaching career to help behind the scenes. Requests that used to come late at night now arrived during the day, and Emma was always by my side. Play that song from back then, please? With a joyful encore request from my daughter, the three of us, smiling and happy, filled the room with the warm sound of piano music. I no longer carried unnecessary vanity or ambition. These days, I simply enjoyed playing the piano with a light heart. Although still on a small scale, we began receiving invitations to perform at piano recitals. And our income had grown beyond what I earned in my part-time job. Since we often traveled together as a family, we decided to plan an upcoming performance tour as both a concert series and a family vacation. Still, I made sure not to neglect household chores, as I deeply understood the importance of maintaining a comfortable home environment. Housework also provided a refreshing mental break for me. Sophie, though no longer teaching, now faced a different kind of busy routine every day. Even so, she continued to support us with unwavering love and dedication. I wanted to help her feel more cared for and allow her to lean on me more whenever possible. To that end, I resolved to do what I could, step by step, to support my family and make our lives even brighter. Henry, this meeting is for college graduates only. It might be too difficult for you. The room fell silent for a moment at those words. I felt my body tense up involuntarily. Sure, I only have a high school diploma, but I'm confident in my field experience and knowledge. Oh, Henry. Can you keep up with today's challenging meeting? Yes, I'll do my best. All eyes in the conference room were suddenly on me. Now, let's hear everyone's opinions on the new business proposal. As ideas were being shared one after another, I raised my hand. I have a suggestion as well. Any other opinions? Constructive suggestions? I was completely ignored. Looking around in disbelief, I noticed everyone avoiding eye contact awkwardly. Ah, so this is what they mean by reading the room. Swallowing my frustration and looking down, the HR manager, Nigel, gave me a sympathetic look and said, "Hang in there, Henry." Thank you. The meeting continued, completely disregarding me. Now, let's discuss the target demographic for the new product. I think males in their 20s and 30s would be ideal. I disagree. I think targeting women over 40 would be better. My colleague, James, tried hard to share his thoughts. Personally, I believe targeting men over 50 is the best strategy, but I couldn't get a word in. The discussion moved forward without my input. All right, let's target young men in their 20s as the main demographic. In the end, James's suggestion was dismissed, and Harold's opinion was forcefully adopted. I couldn't help but wonder if such a biased approach would work. Just as I was about to speak up, CEO Mr. Scott returned to the meeting room. Good to see you're actively participating, Henry. Well, I'm trying. Did you all make sure to hear his thoughts while I was out? The room fell silent again. No, not really. I see. Henry, why don't you share your opinion? Sure. I stood up and began explaining my analysis. I believe we should target men over 50. And why is that? The room went completely silent as I elaborated on my reasoning. Interesting perspective. Harold's face visibly paled. The meeting ran longer than expected, so we decided to take a break. As the other staff went to grab coffee or visit the restroom, Harold approached me. Henry, you should refrain from speaking out. I told you this meeting is for college graduates only. Leave immediately. He whispered harshly, ensuring no one else could hear. Understood. I bowed my head and left. The next day, Harold. My name is Henry Smith. I'm 45 years old this year. I've been working at this leading auto parts manufacturer, Technodrive, for 20 years. Despite being a high school graduate, I take pride in my unmatched experience and knowledge on the job. Back in school, I was more passionate about extracurricular activities than academics. As the captain of the baseball team, I led us to the top 4 in the prefectural tournament, an achievement I'm still proud of today. The lesson of never giving up and the importance of teamwork from my high school days remain the foundation of my approach as a working professional today. After graduating from high school, I joined Technodrive immediately. I was initially assigned to the factory production line. While attending night school to learn technical skills, I worked tirelessly, submitting improvement proposals. That effort paid off, and 5 years later, I was promoted to a supervisor position in the manufacturing department. I was then transferred to the sales department. There, my persistence shone, and I successfully secured deals with major clients one after another. Recognized for my strength in handling numbers and analyzing marketing data, I moved to the planning department. Now, I handle a broad range of responsibilities, from planning new products to conducting market analysis. I've earned strong trust from my colleagues, and my subordinates fondly communicate with me. I'm serious and sincere by nature. Although I struggle to express my own opinions clearly, I always listen to others and strive to evaluate their input fairly. This stems from a bitter experience early in my career when I was mistreated by colleagues to the point of emotional and physical exhaustion. The faces of Samuel, Joel, Thomas, and Aaron, who pushed me to the brink, still occasionally haunt me, tightening my chest with the memory. It was such a painful ordeal. That's why I always strive to treat others with respect, ensuring that no one else endures the same experience. In my personal life, I'm single. I enjoy fishing on my days off. I'm also good at cooking the fish I catch, and I occasionally invite colleagues over to enjoy my homemade dishes. Recently, my biggest concern has been my relationship with my manager, Harold, who transferred to our department 2 years ago. At 38, he's a young elite graduate from the University of Tokyo and a former consultant at a global firm. He openly looks down on me, a high school graduate, and frequently ignores my input during meetings. However, I have a secret that no one knows. My mother, Kimberly, is the only daughter of one of Technodrive's founders. Still, I've worked hard to climb the ladder on my own merit, refusing to rely on family connections. My mother respects my decision and keeps this fact hidden at work. Now, I find myself at a crossroads in life. Should I continue enduring Harold's unreasonable treatment, or should I prove my true worth? The time to make a decision is approaching. Lately, I've started thinking. Perhaps being a high school graduate allows me to see problems on the ground floor and the true needs of customers. And maybe, that perspective is vital for the company's future. My dream is to create a company where employees are evaluated based on their true abilities, not their educational background or career history. I want to build an environment where people like me, who started at the bottom, can proudly voice their ideas. My challenge to turn that dream into reality was about to begin. One morning, when I arrived at work, the entire department was enveloped in a strange atmosphere. Henry, starting today, will implement a new policy, task allocation based on educational background, Harold announced. The office froze at his words. Harold explained the roles for high school graduates, technical school graduates, and college graduates before finally pointing at me. And for our department's only high school graduate, Henry, you'll be in charge of internal maintenance and some special tasks. With a smug smile, Harold began listing my special tasks. Starting with taking out the trash every morning, refilling the copy machine paper, setting up meeting rooms, and even selecting birthday gifts for the staff. Finally, he added the role of office tour guide to my responsibilities. Harold then pulled out a gaudy clown costume in bright red and yellow, declaring it to be my uniform. As chuckles echoed among my colleagues, I trudged heavily to begin my first task, taking out the trash. While I was sorting garbage at the disposal area, Nigel, the HR manager, happened to pass by. Seeing me, he looked shocked and asked about the situation. With a sympathetic gaze, he encouraged me not to give up. That afternoon, after barely managing to pull myself together and continuing with the menial tasks, Harold called me into his office. "Henry, I need you to prepare the materials for next week's new product presentation. Check with James for the details. All you need to do is handle the data entry and finalize the documents." When I tried to voice my opinion, Harold coldly interrupted me. "Henry, I've told you to know your place. What can a mere high school graduate do? Get to work immediately." Swallowing my words, I quietly returned to my desk. That night, I stayed late, working until midnight to finally complete the presentation materials. However, when I got home, an email from Harold was waiting for me. He demanded the materials be finished by 9 a.m., an impossible request. Despite being utterly exhausted, I forced myself to face the materials again, managed to finish them by the deadline, but Harold, upon giving them a quick glance, immediately flew into a rage. "You idiot! Who would be satisfied with such low-quality materials? Redo them!" He threw the documents at me and ordered me to redo it by noon. With all eyes in the office on me, I silently bowed my head and returned to my desk. It was then that James, a colleague, leaned in and whispered to me. He told me he had seen Harold tampering with my data the previous day. I was shocked, but with no evidence, I couldn't say anything. During lunch, I went up to the rooftop alone and gazed at the sky. Today was the anniversary of my grandfather's passing, the founder of this company. I recalled his words, "A company is its people," and let out a deep sigh. In the afternoon, I worked quietly on the revisions and submitted them to Harold just before the 5 p.m. deadline. With a reluctant expression, Harold accepted the documents. That evening, I invited some colleagues, including Nigel, out for drinks for the first time in a while. We discussed Harold's behavior and decided to start gathering evidence of his misconduct. From the next day, we secretly began recording his actions. A few days later, Harold gave me a new special assignment. He instructed me to act as a caddy at next week's golf competition with a client. And, of course, I was to wear the same gaudy uniform. On the day of the competition, I arrived at the golf course dressed in the bright uniform. Ignoring Harold's smirk, I used my observational skills and analysis to provide precise advice to the players. The senior executives from the client's company were impressed by my knowledge and gathered around me during lunch, eager to hear more. Harold couldn't hide his discomfort. After the competition, the executives praised me profusely and expressed high expectations for future business negotiations. Back at the office, Harold reluctantly called me into his office, but before he could say anything, CEO Mr. Scott walked in. "Ah, Harold, I heard about today's golf competition. It seems Henry's efforts made it a great success." Mr. Scott praised my performance and expressed his hopes for my future contributions. Harold glared at me with a face that looked like he was grinding his teeth. That night, I went home feeling genuinely uplifted for the first time in a long while. I knew the road ahead was still long, but I felt like I had taken a solid step forward. When I shared the day's events with my mother, she responded with pride in her voice. A week passed after the golf competition, and Harold's attitude toward me became even colder. One morning, he approached my desk. "Henry, I'm assigning you to handle preparations for next month's trade show. You'll be in charge of the booth for our flagship product, the Navigator 50. Don't mess this up. Understood. Could you provide specific instructions? Figure it out yourself. Even a high school graduate should be capable of that. Harold sneered and walked away. I let out a deep sigh as I began the preparations. A few days later, when I submitted the proposal I had worked on, he gave it only a quick glance before scowling in disapproval. What is this? Do you really think this childish idea will showcase the product's strengths? Redo it. I desperately tried to explain my ideas, but Harold wouldn't listen. In the end, I had no choice but to revise the plan according to his safe but uninspired suggestions. The day before the trade show, while setting up the booth, Harold suddenly appeared. Henry, you'll be the presenter tomorrow. You're up first thing in the morning. What? So suddenly. I haven't had time to prepare. Stop complaining and get to work. If you fail here, you'll have no place left in this company. I spent the entire night creating materials and practicing my presentation. However, when I arrived at the venue the next morning, I was met with a shocking sight. The booth decorations had been completely changed, and they no longer matched the content of the materials I had prepared. Panicking, I asked Harold for an explanation, and he responded calmly. Oh, I made some last-minute changes last night. I forgot to inform you. Just adapt to the situation. With cold sweat running down my back, I began my presentation. However, the lack of preparation really showed and the audience did not respond well. After the presentation, Harold confronted me harshly. What was that disgrace? Such a failure is unheard of. I didn't expect much from you, but this is beyond pathetic. I was left speechless. It was clear that all of this had been part of Harold's scheme. That evening, my colleague James tried to console me. Henry, that was completely unfair. I can't help but think it's Harold's doing. But we don't have any proof. Let's expose Harold's wrongdoing together. If we all work as a team, we can make it happen. James's words gave me a glimmer of courage. The next day, Harold handed me yet another special assignment. Henry, you'll be handling the night shift at the factory for the next month. Of course, you'll still need to complete your daytime tasks. But that would be physically impossible. What's that? A high school graduate like you has no right to complain. I clenched my teeth and said nothing. That night, I called my mother again. Henry, I know it's hard, but you can't run away. You've inherited strength from your grandfather, the founder. Got it, Mom. I'll try to keep going a little longer. With renewed determination from that call, I began working tirelessly day and night. As I reached my physical and mental limits, the factory manager, Simon, approached me one day. Henry, I'm impressed with your recent efforts. There's a new product development project I'd like your input on. Surprised but eager, I shared ideas based on my experience, and Simon listened intently, his eyes shining with interest. A few days later, he called me in. Henry, we created a prototype based on your suggestions. It's outstanding. I was overwhelmed with emotion, experiencing the joy of seeing my ideas come to life for the first time. But the joy was short-lived. Suddenly, Harold appeared at the factory. What's going on here, Simon? How could you share new product details with this man? This was Henry's idea. Ridiculous. There's no way a high school graduate's idea should be adopted. I'll report this to upper management. Harold stormed off, seething with anger. As I stood disheartened, Simon spoke kindly to me. Henry, don't give up. You have real talent, and I'll vouch for you. His words gave me the courage to stand tall once again. The next day, I resolved to visit the CEO's office. When scheduling the meeting, I specifically requested Harold to be present as well. I was determined to lay out everything that had happened in front of Mr. Scott. When I entered the CEO's office, Harold was already there, glaring at me. Refusing to be intimidated, I began to speak only to be interrupted by the Mr. Scott himself. "Henry, I'm already aware of most of what's been happening. In fact, I've been keeping an eye on you." "What?" To my surprise, it was Mr. Scott who initiated the conversation. "Your patience and creativity are invaluable assets to our company. Starting tomorrow, we want you to lead a new project." I was so shocked that I was left speechless. "And Harold, your actions will be thoroughly investigated. Prepare yourself." Harold stood frozen, his face pale. I had been worried that Mr. Scott might not believe me even after hearing everything. But the meeting ended so smoothly that I felt a bit taken aback. On my way home that day, I looked up at the sky with a clear mind. It felt as if I had finally emerged from a long, dark tunnel. A month had passed since I was appointed the leader of the new project. My team was steadily delivering results, but Harold's interference persisted. One morning, Harold approached my desk. "Henry, I need you to go on an overseas business trip." "Understood. Could you provide the details?" "I'll send them later. Just be on the first flight out the day after tomorrow." Confused but compliant, I began preparing. However, as the departure date approached, I still hadn't received any details. Feeling uneasy, I went to Harold's office to inquire, and he greeted me with a smug grin. "Oh, the trip?" That was a lie. "It was just an excuse to get you out of the way." "What?" "There's an important meeting with a client tomorrow. Things will go much smoother without you there." I trembled with anger but forced myself to stay calm. "Understood. Then I will. Starting tomorrow, you'll spend a week at a regional factory doing inventory. And no, you won't receive any travel allowance." Clenching my teeth, I could only nod. Just then, James burst into the office, looking flustered. "Henry, the client meeting has been rescheduled. It's now first thing tomorrow morning." "What?" "Direct orders from Mr. Scott. Henry's attendance is mandatory as well." Harold's face grew visibly pale. The next morning, as the meeting began, Harold was clearly unsettled. Mr. Scott entered the room, and the discussion commenced. "Let's start with the presentation for the new product. Henry, please proceed." Using the materials I had prepared, I delivered a confident presentation. The client's response was overwhelmingly positive, while Harold's expression turned increasingly anxious. "Oh, an urgent call. Please excuse me for a moment." Mr. Scott's phone buzzed softly, and he excused himself as he stepped out of the room. It seemed Harold had been waiting for this moment. "Henry, this meeting is for college graduates only. Don't you think it's a bit too advanced for you?" His abrupt comments silenced the room. I instinctively stiffened. Yes, my education ended with high school, but I am confident in my field experience and knowledge. "Oh, Henry. Do you think you can keep up with today's complex discussion?" "Yes, I'll do my best." The room's attention shifted to me as I prepared to participate. "Now, let's hear everyone's thoughts on the new business proposal." As ideas flowed, I raised my hand. "I have a suggestion." "Any other comments?" "Constructive proposals?" Completely ignored, I looked around in disbelief, noticing the uneasy faces of my colleagues as they avoided my gaze. So, this is what they mean by reading the room, I thought bitterly. As I swallowed my frustration and looked down, Nigel, the HR manager, gave me a sympathetic look. "Hang in there, Henry. Thank you." The meeting continued, completely ignoring me. Now, let's discuss the target demographic for the new product. I think males in their 20s and 30s would be ideal. No, I believe women over 40 would be a better target. My colleague James was doing his best to share his opinion. I strongly believe that targeting men over 50 would be the best strategy. However, the discussion continued without me having the chance to share my opinion. Alright, we'll target men in their 20s as the main demographic. In the end, James's suggestion was dismissed, and Harold's opinion was forcibly adopted. Would such a biased approach really work? I couldn't help but feel concerned. Just as I was about to speak up, Mr. Scott returned to the meeting room. Good. It seems Henry is actively participating as well. Well. I'm trying. Did you all make sure to listen to his input while I was gone? The room fell silent once again. No, not exactly. I see. Henry, would you share your thoughts? Yes. I stood up and began explaining my analysis. I believe we should target men over 50. And why is that? The room fell completely silent as I elaborated on my reasoning. Interesting perspective. Harold's face turned visibly pale. Since the meeting ran longer than expected, a break was called. As the other staff went for coffee or to the restroom, Harold approached me. Henry, I told you to keep your comments to a minimum. This meeting is for college graduates only. You should leave immediately. Lowering his voice so no one else could hear, Harold leaned in and confronted me. Understood. I bowed my head and went home. The next day, something unexpected happened. Mr. Scott stopped Harold in his tracks. Harold, why do you refuse to acknowledge Henry's abilities? Mr. Scott, it's just that he lacks experience. Harold, it seems you don't fully understand the company's philosophy. Starting tomorrow, you'll be transferred to the Hokkaido branch. Harold stood frozen, his expression one of complete shock. Mr. Scott had been monitoring Harold all along. A month passed since Harold's transfer to the Hokkaido branch. My project team continued to deliver results, and the overall atmosphere in the company brightened. Yet, there was something in my heart that felt unresolved. One day, Mr. Scott called me to his office. Henry, we've received some troubling reports from the Hokkaido branch. Is it about Harold? Yes. It seems his attitude is significantly affecting employee morale. I need you to go and assess the situation. I couldn't hide my surprise. To think I'd have to face Harold again. Sensing my hesitation, Scott continued. I trust you to handle this appropriately. I'm counting on you. Understood. I'll give it my all. The next day, I found myself boarding a plane to Hokkaido. As I gazed at the sea of clouds outside the window, I reflected on everything that had happened. My conflicts with Harold, the painful days, and the eventual turnaround filled my thoughts. But was this really the right way? Would simply cornering Harold solve the underlying issues? When I arrived at the Hokkaido branch, I could feel the tense atmosphere in the air. I recognized a few familiar faces among the staff. One of them, Matthew, who I had been close to, looked visibly relieved upon seeing me. Henry, thank you for coming. We're at our limit. Please tell me more about the situation. Matthew described Harold's tyrannical behavior, unreasonable demands, and how employee morale had plummeted. The more I listened, the more severe the situation seemed. I understand. I'll start by talking to Harold. Apparently, Harold had taken over a small meeting room. When I visited him there, he gave me a cold stare. Henry. What brings you all the way here for an inspection? Harold, I've heard from the staff. At this rate. What? How dare a mere high school graduate act so high and mighty? This has nothing to do with you. Just leave. I hesitated for a moment but knew I couldn't back down now. Harold, we may be rivals, but we're also part of the same company. Let's work together too. Ridiculous. Someone like you couldn't possibly understand. I'll rebuild this branch on my own. Stay out of my way. There was an unsettling gleam in Harold's eyes. For a brief moment, I saw my former self in Harold's defiance. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about our confrontation as I sat in my hotel room. Simply pushing Harold further into a corner wouldn't solve the real problem. Instead, I realized I needed to guide his abilities in the right direction. The next day, I gathered all the staff except Harold and addressed them. Everyone, please listen. I know the current situation is tough, but this is a challenge we must overcome together. The staff looked uncertain. Harold has incredible abilities. If we can channel them in the right direction, this branch will undoubtedly improve. But I'll need your cooperation. But Henry, Harold is. I understand your concerns. However, isolating him isn't the solution. We need to bring him into the team. I shared my experience of overcoming conflicts with Harold. Then, I emphasized the importance of recognizing each other's strengths and working together. As I finished speaking, I noticed the staff's expressions gradually starting to change. Henry understood. Tell us what we can do. I proposed specific improvements and held discussions with the department heads. Finally, I went back to the meeting room where Harold was. You again. What do you want now? Harold, I have a request. Let's work together to improve this branch. Harold looked surprised. Your management skills are widely recognized, but to utilize them effectively, trust from the staff is essential. What are you trying to say? Let's spend the next week visiting each department together. Listen directly to the employees and work on solutions as a team. Harold fell silent. However, I saw a glimmer of change in his eyes. Fine. Let's give it a try. From the next day, Harold and I visited each department together. At first, the staff seemed hesitant, but as they saw Harold's genuine efforts, they gradually began to open up. Harold's sharp insights combined with my ability to mediate led to results far exceeding our expectations. By the end of the week, the branch was brimming with renewed energy. On the final day, Harold stopped me. Henry, I owe you an apology. Harold? I was wrong. Academic background and career history aren't everything. I've learned a lot from you. I felt a warmth rise in my chest at Harold's words. No, I've learned a lot from you as well. I hope we can continue to grow together. Harold gave a quiet nod. That night, I called Mr. Scott to report. Well done, Henry. It seems your decisions were the right ones. Thank you, but this is just the beginning. Indeed. The real challenge starts now. I'm counting on you. I nodded deeply. Indeed, this was not the end. Rather, it was the beginning of a new challenge. The next day, I addressed the entire branch staff. Everyone, thank you for this past week. However, this doesn't mean everything is resolved. The real work starts now. The staff listened to my words with serious expressions. We have the potential to make this branch the best in Japan. For that, each of us needs to understand our roles and give our best effort. I'll work hard alongside all of you. Applause erupted. Even Harold nodded with a satisfied expression. On the flight back, I gazed out the window, reflecting on the experience. This journey had allowed me to grow significantly as a person. But many challenges still lay ahead. Returning to headquarters would undoubtedly bring new difficulties. Yet, I no longer felt fear. I had gained confidence that any problem could be overcome with teamwork. Mr. Scott must have known all along. He must have realized the strength Harold and I could achieve by working together. As the plane broke through the clouds, the Tokyo skyline lit up below. I smiled quietly to myself. Tomorrow, a new challenge would begin. There was no turning back now. Believing in the future of Technodrive and in my own potential, I would keep moving forward. With the experience in Hokkaido as my foundation, I vowed to aim even higher. As the plane prepared to land, I began thinking about my next steps. 2 weeks passed since the success in Hokkaido. I returned to headquarters and became immersed in my daily tasks. However, I maintained regular contact with Harold, keeping up to date on the branch's situation. One day, I received an urgent call from Mr. Scott. "Henry, we have a serious problem. A critical defect has been discovered in our flagship product, the Navigator 50. What? What kind of defect? It misguides routes under specific conditions. Several accidents have already been reported." I was stunned. The Navigator 50 was a product I had played a key role in developing. "We're preparing for a press conference. Henry, I need you to handle it." "Me?" "Yes. As the lead developer, it's your responsibility." Though the weight of the responsibility pressed heavily on me, I steeled myself. "Understood. I'll handle it with everything I have." On the day of the press conference, I stood nervously at the podium, ready to face the challenge ahead. As camera flashes flickered, I bowed deeply. "We sincerely apologize for the inconvenience caused by the defects in our product, the Navigator 50. Journalists bombarded me with questions. As the lead developer, how do you plan to take responsibility? What do you think was the cause of this oversight? I answered each question carefully, one by one. However, throughout it all, a deep sense of guilt swirled within me. After the press conference, criticism against me flooded social media. Comments like, "He should take responsibility and resign," were posted one after another. As I sat with my head in my hands, my phone rang. It was Harold. "Henry, are you okay?" "Yes, somehow." "Listen, I need to tell you something. We noticed the defect in the Navigator 50 at the Hokkaido branch, but..." "What? When was this?" "Right after I was transferred." "At the time." "I kept it to myself as part of my grudge against you." I was speechless. If Harold had reported the issue sooner, this situation might have been prevented. "I'm truly sorry. It's my fault." "No, the blame lies with me. As the lead developer, I should have conducted more thorough checks." "Henry, let me attend the next press conference with you. I want to share the responsibility." "Harold." I declined Harold's offer. Revealing his mistake would ruin the positive momentum that the Hokkaido branch had just begun to build. I couldn't let that happen. The next day, I convened an emergency meeting with all staff. "Everyone, I deeply apologize for the concern and inconvenience caused by this defect." The staff looked tense and uncertain. "But we cannot give up now. We have the strength to overcome this crisis." I outlined specific measures for improvement and the direction we would take moving forward. This included establishing a rigorous quality control system, engaging sincerely with customers, and demonstrating a strong commitment to developing new products. Each of us is responsible for the future of this company. Now is the time to unite. A moment of silence was followed by gradual applause. I could see hope beginning to return to the staff's eyes. From that day on, I worked tirelessly, often forgetting to eat or sleep. I made countless apology calls to customers, coordinated repair services, and worked on building a new quality management system. One night, as I was working late into the night, I had an unexpected visitor. It was Mr. Scott. "Henry, still working?" "Mr. Scott, yes, I'm almost finished." "Don't push yourself too hard. But know this, your efforts have inspired the entire team. Everyone is doing their best to support you." "Thank you, sir. I'm truly grateful for their help. And there's something I want to tell you." He began recounting a story about my grandfather, the company's founder, and a similar crisis he had faced. "Your grandfather encountered a similar challenge. He never gave up and united his employees to overcome it." "My grandfather? You are very much like him, Henry. Your integrity and perseverance are remarkable. He would be proud of you." I felt a warmth swell in my chest. Henry, our fight is just beginning. Let's face it together. Yes. Thank you. The challenges continued even after that. I never gave up, no matter how tough the challenges became. Together with my colleagues, I faced and resolved each problem sincerely, one by one. Gradually, trust from our customers began to return. Even the critical comments on social media started transforming into messages of support. As the situation began to stabilize, I proposed a new project. Let's use the lessons learned from the Navigator 50 and develop a safer, more reliable product. The employees' eyes lit up with excitement, and they agreed enthusiastically. Even Harold pledged full support from the Hokkaido branch. I gazed out the window. The stars shining in the night sky seemed to illuminate the path ahead. Indeed, the road ahead is still long. But there's no turning back now. I vowed to overcome this crisis. My goal was to build an even stronger company. The next day, I arrived at the office early in the morning. It was the day the prototype for the new product would be completed. The development team members were waiting with eager anticipation. Everyone, thank you for your efforts so far. Let's witness the birth of the new Navigator together. When the switch was flipped, the new navigation system powered on. The map displayed on the screen was clearer and more detailed than ever before. Most importantly, its safety features had improved significantly. Cheers erupted from the development team. This isn't the end. This is truly the starting line. Let's perfect this product and regain the trust we lost. Everyone nodded with determination. In that moment, I felt certain. This crisis will undoubtedly make the company stronger. It will also help me grow significantly as a person. I took a deep breath. Challenges will surely continue to arise in the future. But I no longer feared them. Together with my team, I knew we could overcome any obstacle. Believing in Technodrive's future and my own potential, I looked forward once more. It was time to take another step toward the next challenge. As we entered the final stages of developing the new Navigator next, an unexpected obstacle arose. A major competitor announced the launch of a similar product. This is going to be a tough situation. Just then, my phone rang. It was Harold. Henry, did you hear? There's a possibility that information about our new product has been leaked. What? What do you mean? We found traces of unusual data access at the Hokkaido branch. It seems likely someone took internal information. I was stunned. To think, after coming this far, there would be an information leak. I quickly regained my composure. Understood. Let's immediately form an investigation team. After informing Mr. Scott, the company launched a full-scale investigation. However, identifying the perpetrator proved difficult. Late one night, I received an anonymous internal whistleblower email. Attached to the email was evidence that implicated a senior executive in collusion with a competitor. I was shocked. The executive was none other than Samuel, one of the individuals who had bullied me in the past. The next day, I discussed the situation with Mr. Scott. This is serious, but we can't call it definitive proof just yet, he said. Understood. We need more thorough investigation, I replied. I worked with Harold to secretly gather evidence. Finally, just as we uncovered decisive proof, word came that Samuel was attempting to flee the country. There's no choice now but to confront this head-on. I held an emergency press conference. Today, we have confirmed that sensitive company information was leaked to a competitor. We are currently working with the relevant authorities to address the issue. Amid the barrage of questions from the reporters, I responded calmly and composedly. Nonetheless, we will not give up. On the contrary, we see this crisis as an opportunity for a fresh leap forward. We will accelerate the release of our new product, the Navigator next, and provide free upgrades to all existing users. The room erupted in murmurs. What about your company's losses? In the short term, yes, there will be losses. But we believe that trust with our customers is far more valuable. This decision sparked mixed reactions within the company. However, I stood firm in my belief. A week after the announcement, the Navigator Next was released. The response was overwhelming, exceeding all expectations, and many customers expressed their gratitude. Meanwhile, the competitor's product turned out to be poorly executed and received lukewarm market reception. As for Samuel, he was apprehended at the airport while attempting to flee, bringing the incident closer to resolution. Having overcome this crisis, the atmosphere within Technodrive underwent a transformation. Staff morale soared, and innovative ideas began flowing like never before. One day, Mr. Scott called me to his office. "Henry, you've done an excellent job. Thanks to you, the company has entered a new era." "No, it's all thanks to the team's efforts." "True, but now I have a new role for you." "A new role?" "I want to nominate you as the next CEO candidate." I was stunned into silence. But soon, I made up my mind. "Thank you. I'll do my utmost to fulfill this responsibility." That night, I called my mother. "Henry, you've truly worked hard." "Yeah, but this is just the beginning." "That's true. But I know you'll be fine. We're always here to support you." My heart was filled with gratitude. With a renewed sense of determination, I began preparing to take the next step toward tomorrow. 6 months passed since I was named the next CEO candidate. Balancing my new responsibilities, I worked tirelessly every day. One day, an unexpected visitor came to the company. "What?" "Mr. Yates." It was my high school teacher and mentor, Mr. Yates. "Henry, you've become quite accomplished." "Mr. Yates, what brings you here?" "I read about your achievements in the newspaper. I just had to come see you." I led him to the reception room. "Henry, to be honest, I was worried when you graduated from high school." "What?" "Your academics were average, but your character was unmatched." "Still, the world can be harsh." I listened quietly. "But you've completely dispelled those concerns. You've shown that academic background doesn't matter. You've embodied what true ability really means." "Mr. Yates, keep giving it your all. Your journey will be a great inspiration for the students of today." Those words moved me deeply, and I bowed deeply in gratitude. After Mr. Yates left, I stood by the window, reflecting on my past. The anxiety I felt when I chose to work instead of pursuing further education. The days when I pushed myself to the limit, and the path I've walked ever since. The next day, inspired by a sudden idea, I proposed a new initiative to Mr. Scott. "How about we create a special recruitment program for high school graduates?" "Interesting proposal. Tell me more." I passionately explained my vision. "A hiring system that focuses on motivation and potential rather than academic background, combined with a rigorous post-hiring training program." "This is an excellent idea. Let's start preparations right away," he said. The initiative garnered significant attention both inside and outside the company. It was even covered by the media, leading to inquiries from numerous other firms. 3 months after the program launched, the first group of special recruitment employees joined the company. "Mr. Smith, I joined this company because I admire you. I'll do my best to follow your example. I'm looking forward to it. But I hope you'll surpass me someday." Their eyes shone brightly with determination. Seeing them, I couldn't help but reflect on my own journey. The next morning, I arrived at the office early. Sitting at my desk, I gazed out the window. The city, bathed in the morning sunlight, seemed to signal the dawn of a new era. "All right, let's do our best today." With that vow in my heart, I began the tasks of a new day. The road ahead will undoubtedly have its challenges. But I am no longer afraid. Because I have strong determination and trustworthy colleagues. And above all, I have faith in my own potential. With a vow to drive Technodrive's future and pursue my own growth, I took my first step toward new challenges. However, this story is far from over. A new chapter for both myself and Technodrive was just beginning. As Technodrive continued to flourish, the fate of those who once stood as antagonists began to darken. First, there was Samuel, the former executive arrested in the data leak scandal. He was convicted of industrial espionage and sentenced to prison. Even after his release, his criminal record became a barrier, leaving him struggling to find employment. One day, I happened to pass Samuel on the street. "Henry." "Samuel." Samuel bowed deeply before me. "I'm sorry. My foolish actions caused so much trouble for the company." "Samuel, while what you did is certainly unforgivable, I believe everyone deserves a chance to redeem themselves." Tears welled up in Samuel's eyes as he listened. "If you're willing, would you consider working at one of our affiliate companies?" "Of course, you'd have to start from the bottom." "Really? Are you serious?" "Yes. I believe there's a place where your experience can be of value." Overwhelmed with gratitude, Samuel accepted my offer. Meanwhile, the colleagues who had once driven me into a corner each walked their own paths. Joel, caught in an embezzlement scandal, faced disciplinary dismissal. Thomas, realizing his lack of ability, resigned voluntarily. It is said that he now works at a small local factory. However, Aaron was the only one to reflect on his past actions and became an active member of the company's harassment prevention committee. One day, Aaron visited my office. "Henry, I have something to discuss." "What's on your mind?" "I'd like to start an anti-bullying project within the company. Can I count on your support?" I was surprised but also deeply moved. "Of course, I'll fully support you." Through these experiences, I came to deeply understand the importance of believing in people's potential. Everyone makes mistakes. However, everyone also has the potential to overcome them and grow. One evening, on my way home, I looked up at the sky. The sunset streaming through the clouds seemed to announce the dawn of a new era. Everyone is walking their own path. With renewed determination, I made a vow. I would continue to build a company that believes in people's potential and fosters mutual growth. That night, I called my mother. "Henry, what's on your mind?" "Mom, people really can change." "Yes, but those who provide the opportunity for change are the truly strong ones." "Thanks, Mom. I'll keep doing my best." After hanging up, I gazed out the window. The city lights sparkled like countless possibilities waiting to be discovered. Tomorrow, a new challenge begins once again. But I am no longer afraid. I knew that no matter the obstacle, I could overcome it. Believing this, I closed my eyes quietly. However, the story isn't over. The world around me in Technodrive was beginning to shift in unexpected ways. New trials and unforeseen encounters awaited us. 5 years had passed since I became CEO of Technodrive, and I had just turned 50. The company continued to grow steadily, and the Navigator Next series remained at the top of the industry. But a new idea was taking root within me. I wanted to give more people a chance, regardless of their educational background or career history. This desire grew stronger each day. One day, I made a monumental decision. I decided to establish an entirely new department within Technodrive. Named the Future Creation Division, this department recruited talented individuals with no educational prerequisites, turning innovative ideas into reality. The products and services born here would be given back to society. 6 months after its establishment, the Future Creation Division had already developed groundbreaking projects. A new mobility system for those with limited transportation access, an environmentally friendly renewable energy system, and an AI learning support program to close educational gaps. One day, a television station requested to do a feature on the division. Initially hesitant, I realized the importance of spreading awareness about this initiative and agreed. On the day of the broadcast, I nervously sat in front of the TV. The Future Creation Division of Technodrive invites challengers regardless of academic background. This segment explores the roots of its founder, CEO Mr. Henry Smith. The screen displayed an essay I had written during high school. Titled My Dream, it read, "My dream is to create a society where everyone has an equal opportunity. It would be a world where people are rewarded for their efforts, regardless of their educational background or family circumstances. I will definitely create such a world." My eyes welled up with tears. The pure aspirations I held back then had now come to life. The response after the program aired exceeded all expectations. Numerous companies reached out to inquire about similar initiatives, and even the government recognized and awarded our efforts. One day, an unexpected visitor arrived. "Mr. Smith, do you remember me?" Standing before me was Mr. Yates, my high school homeroom teacher. "Do you remember that essay? I've kept it all this time." Mr. Yates. Back then, I was honestly worried. "But you've truly made that dream come true." With tears in his eyes, Mr. Yates bowed deeply. "Thank you, Henry. You've given hope to so many people." His words brought tears streaming down my face as well. The next day, I gathered all the employees and spoke to them. "Everyone, we've come this far thanks to all of you. Let's continue building an even brighter future together." As the room erupted in applause, I glanced out the window and noticed a beautiful rainbow stretching across the sky. That night, I returned to my family home for the first time in a long while, where my mother welcomed me warmly. "Henry, you've done so well." "Yeah, but this is just the beginning." "That's true. But I'm sure your father and grandfather are proud of you in heaven." I silently embraced my mother. Later that night, I stepped into the garden and gazed up at the starry sky. The struggles of the past, the joys, and the happiness I now felt. It all seemed to come together as one grand story. "Dad, Granddad, have you been watching? I promise to keep doing my best." Looking up at the starry sky, I made a quiet vow. Challenges will surely arise again. But I no longer fear them. Because I have a dream, and I have teammates to chase it with. Believing in the future of Technodrive, of Japan, and of the world. I take another step toward the unknown tomorrow. This story has only just begun. For our journey, our challenge, will never truly end.